I'm Alexandra Swann, and we're here overlooking downtown El Paso, Texas. Our city is over 400 years old, but today, thanks to Agenda 21 and ICLEI, we are undergoing a radical transformation as they promise to transition us into a newer, greener, more modern 21st century version of ourselves using smart growth and sustainable development. Like hundreds of other cities in the U.S., El Paso is a member of ICLEI, a UN non-governmental organization which helps cities create sustainable developments and embrace smart code. In 2012, El Paso adopted a new master plan which implements smart code, smart growth, and sustainable development principles called for in a 1992 UN policy document titled Agenda 21. Our master plan gives us a new landscape ordinance to make our city greener, a new downtown redevelopment project, new city headquarters for new offices, an expanded public transit system costing $27 million, bike lanes, walkable communities and green spaces across the city, roundabouts to calm traffic, that's code for discouraging automobiles. Smart growth, sustainable initiatives, and new urbanism seek to get Americans out of the suburbs, away from private cars and single-family housing, and into mixed-use and mixed-income multifamily housing and public transportation. But in order to encourage people to move downtown, cities like ours need an anchor.
Play ball, El Paso!
So when local developers offered to bring a AAA minor league baseball team to El Paso, our city jumped at the chance to build an arena stadium downtown. In fact, our mayor and city council knew it was such a great idea that they could not trust the voters of El Paso to make the wrong decision by voting against it. El Paso voters were allowed to vote on almost $500 million in bonds for quality of life improvements. These bonds supposedly meant that our property taxes would go up gradually rather than spiking. And voters did get to vote on a new hotel tax, which would supposedly require visitors to pay for 70% of the cost of the stadium rather than residents. But voters were not allowed to vote on the site chosen for the new ballpark, our City Hall. Even though our City Hall was only 34 years old, the demolition of the building would mean millions of dollars in relocation costs for city officers and employees. Efforts to put that measure on the ballot for the May elections were rebuffed when on April 14, 2013, City Hall was imploded to make room for construction of the downtown stadium at a proposed cost of $50 million. The total cost of imploding City Hall, building the stadium, and moving the employees was estimated to be between $80 and $100 million. And that figure does not include maintenance or repairs. We've even gotten a new city motto, El Paso, it's all good. Unfortunately, it's not all good. Before groundbreaking even took place, the stadium construction costs had increased an additional $10 million to a total of $60.8 million, as the team owners came back to City Council with some additional changes that were not part of the plan originally approved by City Council. In June, voters did get to decide whether they wanted to reward the City Council that brought us $500 million in expenses with more authority. And on June 15th, El Paso overwhelmingly rejected progressive City Councilman Steve Ortega, a staunch and enthusiastic proponent of the new city plan, in favor of businessman Oscar Leeser, who's the owner of a highly successful auto dealership who promised to run the city the way he runs his business. In a 75 to 25% vote, El Paso has elected Leeser as mayor. Unfortunately for the new mayor and the city council, the downtown stadium is the gift that keeps on taking. On August 1st, the city manager informed City Council that in order to be able to sell the bonds that were used to finance the stadium's construction, they had to raise the interest rate on those bonds by 1.5%. Unless the city sells the bonds, the construction of the stadium stops, and the city will find itself embroiled in litigation with the team's owners, who purchased the AAA team only after the city agreed to construct a suitable stadium. But by raising the interest rate, the city increased the stadium cost $17 million, a cost to taxpayers of $566,000 a year. Property taxes can't be used to pay for the stadium costs, so the money comes out of the general fund. But that leaves less money for other city services, police, fire, etc. And to make up the shortfall in those areas, the city will have to raise our already high property taxes even higher. Sadly, downtown ballparks have a well-documented history of not producing the economic growth that residents of El Paso were promised when they were not allowed to vote on this project. In a September 2012 KBIA story, reporter Matthew Smith quotes Deputy City and County Manager Bill Studer, speaking of AAA ballparks, "They all lose money from a strictly accounting thing." Apparently, they all lose money from a strictly non-accounting thing too. A February 2nd, 2012 article on Bloomberg titled, "As the Super Bowl Shows, Build Stadiums for Love, Not Money," candidly addresses this issue. According to Bloomberg, Funding for sports stadiums has been found in dozens of studies over several decades to fall short of the promised benefits and to cost taxpayers more than expected. Bloomberg cites Harvard Associate Professor of Urban Planning Judith Grant Long, who found that the cost of public funding for stadiums typically runs 40% higher than initially promised. Taxpayers continue to pay for the stadiums decades after they are no longer in use. And stadiums typically do not bring economic development to most regions, they just move entertainment dollars around the city. A Colgate University study conducted last summer confirmed that of 55 downtown stadiums constructed with at least 25% public funds, only 8 are currently fostering economic development. Why does any of this matter? Since 2008, 8 cities and towns in the U.S. have filed bankruptcy. These include San Bernardino, California, Stockton, California, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Central Falls, Rhode Island, and of course Detroit, which this summer became the largest U.S. city ever to file bankruptcy. Ironically, it is because of Detroit's bankruptcy that the interest rates on our bonds increased. These cities travel down the same road upon which we have now embarked. Massive debt, which led to major cuts in public services and in many cases high property taxes. As Detroit, Stockton, and San Bernardino go, so go we, unless we demand that our civic leaders stop this fiscal madness immediately. In the world of Agenda 21-style city planning, fiscal conservatism simply doesn't matter. Maurice Strong, chairman of the 1992 Earth Summit, has famously stated, "Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class, involving high meat intake, the use of fossil fuels, electrical appliances, home and workplace air conditioning, and suburban housing, are not sustainable. If prosperity is the enemy of environmentalism, bankruptcy is certainly the cure. And city planners are bypassing voters wherever possible to apply this cure to us all."
El Paso deserved better than what we're getting. Your city, wherever it is located, does too. So when the folks at ICLEI come to you arm in arm with big developers, promising downtown redevelopment anchored by a hugely expensive entertainment venue, get informed, get organized, and then do yourselves a favor and just say no.